Alright, we're back with more NBA coverage. In this one, I'll be covering all the Game 3 action for the conference finals round of the 2025-26 playoff campaign in the NBA. Man, jeez, look, man, the way that these series have been going, for a couple of the teams, of course, coming out on the winning side, they seem to be trending in the right direction. And while at least one of the losers here may still have a chance at salvaging something, it does not look promising, in particular for one team. I think we all know who it is. Maybe it's just them not belonging here in this class. But nevertheless, it could be pivotal. Typically, as they continue to break down the percentages, it's stated that, hey, whoever comes out in victory in Game 3s tend to win the series at a pretty high rate. And so, if you wanted to give yourself the best chance possible, you needed to come out following, again, some of the same customs which helped you garner wins in at least the first couple tries, and at the very least try to maintain, a bit of adaptability as well, not necessarily having to stick to the status quo the whole way, and being able to create some alternative situations in spite of whatever the hell may be going on. Because if you can just stray away from that and provide something unexpected that tends to work, well then shit, you have yet another avenue unlocked to potential success in the series you're playing in. So any number of things can help. Man, I think no game may embody this further than this one between the Thunder and the Spurs to start things out. Now, of course, the Spurs lost a bit of a heartbreaker in a way, considering how things went in Game 1. They allowed the two-time MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and that team as a whole largely to respond relatively well in Game 2, winning outright and winning it late after just a very slow but apparent takeover of everything that went down. And of course, being at home now with it back in San Antonio, I actually mentioned that this was 9 years to the day that they last held a conference finals game there. So, the fans had to pack everything out for it. And let's just say that in the very beginning, they weren't disappointed. Because what they proceeded to do literally set a new standard for something that rarely happens when it comes to the very start of a game. They wasted no time, as you saw De'Aaron Fox just continue to blister his way to the rim through all the contact they were trying to provide defensively. It didn't matter. He's too quick with the ball in his hands. They created so much pressure on the interior early, and it opened up three-pointers for Devin Vassell and Victor Wembanyama early. In fact, multiple occasions for Devin Vassell. And their defense was just as intentional about what they were doing out there on the Spurs end. When I say that virtually, they got no space to create room for anything. Even when you look at guys like SGA and AJ Mitchell, who was starting in place of Jalen Williams, the Santa Clara one, after not being listed as eligible to play in this one, those guys tried to get their feet inside the paint, tried to get their feet in the mid-range area and set up for shots, and they weren't even able to get them up. That's how much defense, on ball and off ball, was being exercised by the Spurs unit. Just all in their grill, making them uncomfortable early, and that stuff just piled up in the first few minutes of the game, mind you. Just the first three around was all the Spurs needed to take this out to a 15-0 lead. Yes, you heard that right. Against a Thunder team that just performed exceptionally well in Game 2 to get a win on the board, with a chance to potentially take back home court advantage in San Antonio. It did not start off even remotely well for them. They were already getting just completely blitzed by this team. And it's crazy. You wouldn't typically expect it from the Thunder in this case, who are always going to try to set the tone in these kinds of games. We know how well they respond, and they already proved that they can more than hold their own weight there. But here in this game, that's how we're coming out. It seemed a little bit lackluster. Overall, it was a bit historical as well. This is tied for the second longest and largest unanswered run to open a playoff game in the entire history of the sport. And it was also just one shy of the NBA record in the play-by-play era. Because we see runs like that all the time. Of course, you've already started to get some points on the board from both sides before any of those end up going down. You don't see that within just the first 3 minutes of the game. And so, with a damn near packed out crowd, with the rainbow of t-shirts going on down there amongst the entire fan base, trying to get in season and in rhythm with the, appearance on the court, it felt as though they were doing everything in their power to take this one early. And hell, if you're gonna expand on the lead while not allowing the Thunder to get any rhythm, well, that would be the best case scenario for San Antonio. Of course, not everything is perfect, and let's just say that things instantly derailed the second that they set Wembanyama down. Of course, they had started to get a couple points on the board with really simple looks for Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. They still had a 19-4 lead. So very much, this was still a case where, hey, if they keep their foot on the gas pedal, they're going to be all good. No lead is safe, though. And the non-Wembanyama minutes came back to bite this Spurs team in the ass again. Because instantly, as soon as he comes off the court, you can see it the very second he gets off the court. The intensity on the glass withers away. The rotations on the defensive end are completely lost as all of these bench players, and keep that in mind, because they'd already come in the Thunder with a massive advantage off the bench, and no secret here, that continued as the intentionality just completely got lost on the Spurs team. And before you knew it, the Thunder themselves started to storm all the way back, hitting 3-point shot after 3-point shot after 3-point shot, with some of the same suspects here in Caruso and even the Arkansas Jalen Williams coming off the bench and giving them some deep production from range early on. And it's just crazy to see, because you're not expecting this Thunder team, who in the last couple regular seasons, they have not shot that well from the three-point line. And here they are in the playoffs, putting together a very feared, well-rounded roster who can score at all three levels. I think the Spurs were still banking on the idea of having everyone else outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander make an impact, and, it does not help you when players are hitting shots to that degree. Slowly but surely, the lead started to shrink, and you had the Thunder go on a 16-5 run themselves. And in this same time span, you saw Jared McCain really, with all this three-point shooting, it's not even like he went on to have a great night shooting himself, but he was instantly aggressive, setting the tone, trying to get in the lane and create good shot opportunities for himself down low, which you would rarely see from a guy who is projected and labeled as a purebred sharpshooter who can hang with the best of them in that respect. So that was crazy to see him do that early on, and maintain that for a good amount of this game right here. At the very least, the Spurs still held on to a brief lead towards the end of the first quarter, and they eventually had the 31-26 advantage by the end. Some things were going according to plan, as you had Victor Wembanyama at the very least get some good scoring early on compared to what happened last game. Although a brief, moment of disaster occurred when he picked up 2 fouls in literally just 20 seconds. So they definitely have to be careful about that going forward. On the plus side, overall, they held Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to no points. Just the fourth scoreless quarter he's had in the past couple seasons. Rarely do you, not even a couple seasons. I think they put it over a span of 4 to 5 years. His fourth scoreless quarter in that time. Regardless of how you may, complain about how he gets his points and fills them up, there's no denying that he is one of the more elite players in that ability to just put points on the board and get buckets. That's what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does. And he did not have a single point after one quarter. From that standpoint, you'd think that, the Spurs would be thinking they'd won. Well, not really. Because it felt like ever since that 15-0 run, although the Thunder could not really pull away that much from this Spurs team, they had all the momentum on their side, and in what was a slow run, they maintained that throughout the entire game. They eventually took back the lead early once Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got his first points of the game off of an open three-pointer at the top of the key. And the defense for the Spurs here, it was still relatively fine, but they, again, were able to get their way. The threat of having Shai Gilgeous-Alexander do what he does on a night-to-night basis opened up virtually everything else for this Thunder team. And they were so zoned into that everyone else, whether it be Caruso, still giving them quality three-point production off the bench. Literally, by the end of this game, they mentioned that he was shooting somewhere around 63% from the three-point line in just this series alone. Or Cason Wallace coming in and giving them quality shooting off the bench. Or Jared McCain on one such occasion, even being aggressive and going right at Victor Wembanyama of all people, getting a floater over him. Is that stuff is just crazy. They kept on getting their own style of play incorporated here. And it got to a point where the Spurs, they could occasionally stop it, but not for long enough stretches of time to really slow down the momentum of the Thunder here. And it did not help that they themselves, outside of Devin Vassell, for the most part, largely struggled to generate great outside looks for themselves. At the very least, they weren't hitting them to the same level of efficiency. They were there, but the shooters that you'd expect to hit, the Keldon Johnsons, the Julian Champagnes, they were absolutely not. And so, again, this is a bit of a slow battle where they still held on to the lead for as much as possible. Turnovers, again, were not really to the same level of, terrible outputs that they were at in Game 1 and Game 2. But late in the second quarter, those same things started to take over again. Even with Stephon Castle not being asked to handle the ball as much, with De'Aaron Fox now being back for this game, which was the huge update there, they still found themselves in such a rut in terms of protecting the basketball. And once more, those are moments where the Thunder were allowed to do what they do best, get out in transition and run the floor completely. In fact, that very idea put some of their players in foul trouble, namely Keldon Johnson, who already had 3 fouls before halftime, and of course Victor Wembanyama as well for the large portion of the second quarter, having to deal with that, even though he started off the second quarter at the same time. They just were unfazed by this Spurs team, and that is a testament to the Thunder going through the process last year, winning the entire thing, and then having to reset while retooling, apparently, with the right pieces for them, and still overcoming all of these different obstacles that they faced. They have just proven it through their entire experience, and for them to still be so young, they have the balance on that team that few others can really replicate throughout the league. It just works for them. And that speaks volumes when you consider that their starters, even up to this point, hadn't really contributed all that much. It was mainly bench contribution. Mainly. And yet they were still holding such a good position on the Spurs team throughout the rest of the second quarter. Now, luckily for them, they were able to somewhat crawl back into it despite a couple of runs. And ultimately, they had a 58-51 lead, the Thunder, by the end of the second quarter. McCain, of course, was still going to work at this time. And I will say, just a quick side note, like, he and Isaiah Hartenstein, I don't know what it is, because there was a possession earlier in the second quarter. Hartenstein gets the ball and then just swings a bounce pass right over to McCain on a string inside the lane. Nobody's there, and he's able to put up that layup with ease. I don't know what it is about those two, but quite literally ever since he got traded there, because Daryl Morey's stupid ass decided to sell Ha, and niggas really believed that he was selling Ha, okay? Those two, Hartenstein and McCain, have been locked the hell in. So that's been an interesting dynamic to explore since the trade deadline. Because I tell you, whether it be him getting those assists on the three-point looks, and even when you see something like that, it's just like the chemistry that they are already possessing and that the team has already ingratiated with each and every single one of these guys, despite them not always logging rotational minutes. It's insane. And it's something that you can't quantify in a moment like this. Yet it is as invaluable of a group of assets as you can have. And the Spurs, despite all of that, they were still in it. They were still containing a lot of the starters. So it's not like this was completely over, but they needed a lot of work in order to get things done. And it would have to start in the third quarter. Now, what did help them is that opening the third quarter, aside from some more defensive lapses to allow the Thunder to dribble drive for multiple pulls away from the rim for Victor Wembanyama. No, literally, the first two buckets were byproducts of him being pulled away and out of position, with Isaiah Hartenstein leaking back, and then also Alex Caruso cashing in another corner three-pointer over him. Because, of course, you'd expect De'Aaron Fox to handle himself a lot better as well, but even he was not impervious to the struggles from the perspective of turnovers in this one, because he also just had numerous silly ones that still put this Spurs team behind the eight ball. And as long as they could string together possessions, that was what was going to be the key for them in this one. Like, the Thunder at multiple points, they had leads of like 10, 11, 12. Those aren't blowout territory. Yet it feels like that when you can't go on any long runs yourself outside of the one you had to start the game. What did help them is that they were able to get into the bonus early, but not without a little bit of controversy. Because this is the kind of stuff that you cannot make up. Now, things had slowed down for a little bit, and Julian Champagny, by that point, had actually gotten his first three-pointer of the game. But the Spurs had multiple looks out in transition after a turnover and a miss. On both occasions, Stephon Castle was fouled pretty hard. And he did not take a liking to it. I will say about the one that Alex Caruso did, it is a hard foul in a way, and you can understand Stephon Castle's frustration. I mean, he's going up for a dunk, and he gets grabbed right as he's about to go up with it. He could have taken an even crazier fall than he ended up landing with, and you could be in a much worse situation looking at him in that moment if he would have had any different of a landing there. So you understand his frustration as he attempted to approach Caruso there. The thing is, when you slow it down, for some reason, he had the edge out there, and Caruso was certainly hustling back. I don't know what made him decide to slow down. And that's the point that was being made on the broadcast as well. It's like, you can't slow down knowing how gritty this Thunder team wants to play, knowing that they're going all out on the other end. And so that is a mistake where Stephon Castle might have fucked that up. But he got to the free throw line, didn't really convert as much as he'd need to in that moment, but getting in the bonus helps. On one of the next few possessions they get, you have them run out in transition again, and this time he's going full speed, but AJ Mitchell is trailing him, and he decides that he wants a piece of that too, grabbing Stephon Castle before he can even go up and pushing him down to the ground. That was not deemed a basketball play. In fact, that was upgraded to a flagrant 1, and Mitchell and also Devin Vassell were given technical fouls, double technical fouls, for the ensuing skirmish after that. You can't blame Vassell for it. He's just out there trying to protect his teammate in that situation. Because to have Castle get hunted down like that 2 different times is crazy. It is insane. You don't want him to have an easy chance to get field goals on the board. So again, the Thunder, in terms of hard fouls, they're thinking to themselves that this is okay. This is fair game. For most of the series, especially game 2, Stephon Castle has been a consistent force inside. There's no need to give it to him for free if you can prevent that from happening. And largely in this game, they did not. These are just a couple of examples and how it might have gotten a little too extreme. But largely, Stephon Castle, when it came to contributions from the field, along with some of the other struggles, shots were not falling. So honestly, either way they played it, they couldn't allow Stephon Castle to shoot as much as possible. And he was not going to really do all that much. Even still to this point, he had not had a single field goal make. The great majority, if not all, of his points came from the free throw line. But you got in the bonus early, so that makes sense. In fact, this third quarter was essentially, I got down some notes for it, and I will say that the Spurs occasionally had a few brief runs here and there, largely due to the fact that, hey, the second they got fouled, you can rely on getting yourself some extra points at the line if you need to in order to slow things down. So they had a couple of runs occasionally in this, but it was largely facilitated out of the free throw line rather than anything they were really doing on the offensive end. They still struggled to get Victor Wembanyama going because after a 7-point first quarter, he had struggled to even get a field goal since then. Like they were saying it. The 33-second mark of the first quarter was the last time he'd even had a field goal make in this game. And with them struggling to get him going, struggling to have their shots fall down elsewhere, as it was also a bit of a rougher night for the likes of Dylan Harper out there, even coming off the bench in this occasion, they had to at least try to generate some stops on the defensive end. Unfortunately for them, even with the Thunder players themselves not really doing as much damage to the same degree, they were still as reliable as ever in their roles. Because Jared McCain quite literally could not stop missing. SGA, after a while, settled into the point where he was timing everything up the right way, getting the floater over Wembanyama before he could even get his arms all the way up to alter the shot trajectory on that cover, and just putting up together a solid third quarter for himself. He'd already done a lot of damage from the facilitating standpoint, and now he was also going out of his own way to initiate scoring opportunities. Now again, you may not favor how it happened because, don't worry, with the ways in which fouls were called throughout this entire third quarter, the Thunder themselves will get to the free throw line too, and also get into the bonus. Now again, are all these reasonable foul calls? Not necessarily. But it goes both ways if the Spurs themselves accounted for more free throws in the same quarter. All in all, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did have multiple trips to the line. I just, it's tough. Especially with the, falling thing. There have been so much stuff coming out about that it's like, man, what is it that you can do as a Spurs player in that situation? And I'm just saying it the whole time. You have got to play disciplined. You can't even give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander an angle, a path to work with to bait you into a foul. And it largely came down to the fact that they just could not stay in front of his body. They couldn't. They tried their hardest, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was lulling them to sleep so badly that they kept getting in jail or kept playing him to his side. And the second that happened, that's when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander decided to strike and go for the free throw baiting. You can say, he doesn't have to hunt for this so aggressively. At the same time, you're serving up those opportunities to him on a silver platter. Do you really expect the player of his caliber to not be as aggressive as possible in those moments and exploit them for what they are not doing on the defensive end? You can't necessarily blame him for that. And so you really just, over the last few minutes of this game, had everything slowed down. And I mean literally. They mentioned, as I was watching a KOT4Q breakdown on the game, they mentioned that this third quarter took about 45 minutes or something of real time. Mostly because of how much the free throw line was a core piece of everything that took place in this quarter. And you look at that, and you think that with them activating it this early, the Thunder were still able to, at least lose a little bit of their luster and a little bit of their lean here. By the end of it, that didn't happen. The Spurs still struggled to get points and still struggled with just stringing together quality possessions in a row so often to where they still were able to increase the lead to double digits by a point in this third quarter and ultimately ended it with a 95-84 lead over San Antonio, despite Wembanyama literally getting his first field goal at the 2 minute 8 second mark of the third quarter, and trying to go on a personal run to end it, to at least start initiating a little bit of momentum heading into the fourth quarter. That could be a good sign in and of itself. But this was just looming towards disaster for San Antonio if they could not generate stops on the defensive end. Because by this point, they were still being outscored by a great amount. The box plus minus since that time, especially for the bench players, have been astronomical. And the Spurs were not able to match that, despite being able to go as deep as the Thunder can, at least on paper. And then the fourth quarter really just put things to bed. I mean, the Spurs, again, they tried and tried and tried. They could not stop anyone. They had a 73 run yielded to open up the fourth quarter, and on defense, they just continued to get caught sleeping on several occasions as these bench players tried their absolute hardest to take OKC home. Really, that's where this was getting towards. It did not help as well that they remained undisciplined, despite what you want to say about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander foul baiting. You have to be able to defend him way better than they were. It is just that simple. And they did not accomplish that job, as even more people would get into foul trouble, including Stephon Castle. Victor Wembanyama was still there after, avoiding a very suspicious play from Cason Wallace, leaning in for that. You had the same thing happen on this Castle three-pointer. So again, that was a foul also. It's not like this was a flop. Like, he legitimately hit him in his forearm and got in his landing space. Those are things that you cannot do. So the Spurs kind of shot themselves in the foot with those situations. The Spurs at least had a little bit of life in knowing that Hartenstein himself had also gotten 4 fouls up to this point of the game. And it was still a 10-point game. It was not necessarily out of reach if they could only just start to stack up points and possessions in the row rather than going back and forth with this Thunder team. They got it back down to 9, but once again, coming out of the timeout, you just have them perform as sloppy as possible. And the real dagger started to come to form once Luke Kornet, after they swung the ball around, was so late on this three-point contest that Jalen Williams, the Arkansas man, was allowed to get a 4-point play out of it and increase the lead to 15 with about 6 minutes left in the ball game. And that's the craziness. You get down to this situation, and at no point did the Thunder even remotely take a lead greater than 15 in this game, and yet it still felt like at this moment, too many marginal mistakes had piled up for this Spurs team to really make a quality comeback in this game. They still tried, but once again, getting baited into the fouls and having Cason Wallace essentially close it out with the dagger to increase the lead back to 13 after, just very last resort possessions from this team. They ended up losing the Spurs 123 to 108, with the Thunder going for 2 consecutive wins and forcing the Spurs into their first loss in 11 games, and now 12 to this point, after ones in which they lost. They won 11 straight games following losses in this regular season and the playoffs. And that was just broken by this Thunder team. They also ended up losing back-to-back games for the first time since mid-January, when the Spurs actually lost to the Timberwolves and then the Thunder in mid-January. So, how ironic is that? And now, things have gotten, even more interesting. The road team had already taken a game, so you know that we're in for more of a series here. But the Thunder just completely walked this team down and shut them up. Like, you go from down 15-0 and everybody panicking to then winning by 15 and everybody getting back in your good graces once again. That's literally how this ended up going. And let me just tell you right now, while Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did have 26 points in this game, 12 assists as well on 6 of 17 shooting and 2 threes, it was not only because of him. And the starters as well, they did not contribute as much as you'd think. AJ Mitchell ended up getting hurt and did not play all that much time. Lucius Dort went scoreless. Holmgren and Hartenstein did okay, but the real storyline for this Thunder team came off the bench. after setting a playoff record in their franchise's history with having 4 different players put up 10 or more points in a game. Not only did they do it again in this one, but these guys, especially when it mattered, let's just do it when it mattered. When all of the, core players were playing before bench players were substituted in for the Spurs in an effort to concede, they had a 71-18 advantage in bench points. 71-18. And by the end of the game, they set a franchise playoff record with 76 points off the bench. Like, what? This Thunder team, the story about them relying solely on SGA, needing to have the Santa Clara Jalen Williams out there to be their Batman, the clamor for Chet Holmgren to provide far more effort and man up in this series against Victor Wembanyama, well, they just put that notion to rest if all they have to do is substitute in a couple of their bench players for at least 10 good minutes in a row and ensure that they can still get quality shooting and performance out of each and every single one of those guys. And you look at it this way, a couple of these guys they drafted, a couple of these guys they didn't even have before last season. Cason Wallace was a draft pick. He had 11 points in this game and 3 steals, while, coming off of an appearance on the all-defensive teams, which, again, I'll expand more on that when I talk about other stuff around the NBA aside from the playoff games, on 3 of 8 shooting. Jalen Williams, the Arkansas one, was also a draft pick for them, and he had 18 points with 5 threes in this game. Then you get to Jared McCain, who, again, soaring him high, only for him to then become a core contributor in this game and possibly the second most valuable player on the court. He had 24 points off the bench, a playoff career high, along with Jalen Williams also doing the same thing in terms of scoring, on 10 of 21 shooting. Literally, just getting down in the lane and getting tough buckets over defenders who are more than likely taller than he is, who may be stronger than he is, and still willing his way to those high-quality looks over and over again. And then Alex Caruso, who they signed prior to the regular season last year, they got him scoring 15 points as well. He has been, overall in this series, their second leading scorer, if I'm not mistaken. And that stretch continued in this game, going 4 of 7 from the field and shooting 3 of 5 from deep. So when it comes to this Thunder team, and us continuously saying that, hey, they have the ability to start multiple starting 5 lineups, you believe it when they're performing like this. Trying to so emphasize, this team overall, by the end of this game, when it comes to bench scoring specifically in this series, the Thunder are outscoring the Spurs bench 183 to 64. Think about that. In a series where the games have now been decided by a total of essentially 29 points, off the bench alone, the Thunder have an advantage of plus 119 off the bench. That is insane. And it was mentioned as well that essentially after the 15-0 deficit, they outscored this Spurs team by 30 overall. So again, at no point did they take a lead greater than 15, and yet they still controlled the pace for virtually the rest of the game, and at no point could the Spurs break out of it. That is insane. It wasn't even just the offensive end. Like, the numbers won't tell you that they had a massive advantage in terms of overall rebounds or overall free throws or things like that. But again, they were still able to get out in transition and create those timely points off of turnovers. They held Victor Wembanyama ineffective on the glass and out of the rhythm offensively for a good portion of this game. And once that slowed down, the Spurs team, outside of Devin Vassell, being a reliable scoring option and three-point shooter for them, especially over the last couple of games now, they did not really have many answers outside of it. So it was a valiant effort from the Spurs, but a very well-executed plan from the Thunder team to just keep that aggression up and balance it with elite-level shooting. Again, a team that did not shoot that well in the regular season, all of a sudden now, they shot in this game, as far as it's concerned, they shot 44.7% from the field. Beyond the arc, rather. 44.7% from the field for this team, when you could just leave them open in the regular season and let them shoot. No, you can't do that anymore. And even more so in the playoffs, with them literally being the second best three-point shooting team by percentage in the playoffs, as of the recording of this video. Now, of course, the game 4 will be played later tonight between these two teams. And man, like the Spurs are probably still thinking that, hey, our best bet is to force everyone else to shoot. Maybe the shots will stop falling. But especially with what happened in this game, if that is the plan still, they need to do a far better job of getting out in front of them and try as hard as they can to not make Victor Wembanyama the last line of defense on these perimeter shots. Because again, in the similar, fashion that they had in game 2, by drawing him out that far away from the paint and forcing him to be the last line of defense for a three-point shot, they're leaving themselves exposed in the paint. And it had led to multiple other long rebounds and other opportunities to get instant putbacks for this Thunder team, with no one else nearly big enough down low to create any sort of defensive pressure there to force resistance. And it happened too many times, again, in a game like this, for them to, by the end of it, get the upper hand. So they have to be more tactical about that in game 4. For them overall, in the numbers, it did not help that their shooting was just lackluster overall, outside of a select few moments in the game. Like Victor Wembanyama as well was saying that essentially he didn't think he was being a great, not to say influence, but a great uplifting presence for his team, and that he needed to be more of a team player. I, could see where he's coming from, maybe on the defensive end. He did have 26 points in 15 shots in this game still, but again, they forced him to take as little of them at the rim specifically as possible. They forced him to live outside of the paint. And it felt like a struggle for him and this team as a whole to make shots, which is exactly where the Thunder want them living in. They did not want things to be as easy as it felt for this man specifically in game 1. And now it is stretched out to that of the entire team because they all went through it. So, part of that comes with, again, trying to get over it and overcome it and game plan the right way and scheme up the right things in the next few games. They do need a lot more, though. Devin Vassell in this game, for example, did shoot 3 of 6 from the three-point line and shot 6 of 12 from the field for 20 points and 7 rebounds along with 4 steals. So he came in and did his part despite getting in foul trouble. He did what he had to do as an offensive weapon. Then you get to everyone else who, from three-point range combined, shot just 8 of 30 from three-point range. And when I say that players struggle outside of this, they struggle. De'Aaron Fox as well, like he went through a weird thing in the third quarter where, after diving through a loose ball, he was literally limping on the court for a couple possessions in a row and had to be taken out and given, I guess, some relief on the sideline to ease the pain in his re-aggravated right ankle sprain. And he went back out there and he played to finish the game out. I don't think that was worth it. I understand that you may want him back for this series, and he is a player that could be highly valuable for what the Spurs need to do moving forward in order to get a win and, potentially come out with the series win. It's just that if he's still dealing with an injury like that, and he's still going through that kind of pain, it's not worth rushing him back. It just isn't. So they have to try to figure out managing that a little better. Because I don't know if that was the wisest decision in the world for them. Also, Julian Champagnie shot 4 of 10 from the field and just 2 of 8 from 3. Not necessarily, a quality shooting output for him. And that's largely been the case for most of the series. Now, again, it didn't hurt them in game 1. They got the help from elsewhere. But they'd like to see him, produce a game with multiple threes in the same way that Caruso has, done for the Thunder off the bench. If even you activate a glimpse of that, they could potentially be in a different conversation here. Dylan Harper had a rough night off the bench. He was also questionable with an adductor injury. He was confirmed to play, and I guess in a way you could argue that some of that was still lingering around. So 6 points for him is a little lackluster, but I suppose if he can get healthier, this might change around. And quite frankly, the Spurs will need it. Because when he is coming off the bench, throughout the regular season and in the early playoff run, he has been their best bet when it comes to providing scoring off the bench. He changes the pace up so well for this Spurs team. And in the same way that the Thunder are exercising that on their front, by having essentially every bench player who touches the court be a threat, they are going to need that. And it does begin with what Dylan Harper can do, although it is a lot to ask of a 20-year-old rookie. They just got to make sure that his body's right. Stephon Castle as well did keep the turnovers to a minimum, but it still didn't mean he was efficient. He did have 7 assists and 14 points, so all that is fine. But again, a very late and essentially irrelevant three-pointer that had no effect on the game that ended up being his only field goal make. He shot 11 of 14 from the line. So he essentially went 0 of 7 outside of that for the rest of the game surrounding it and had pretty much 3 points on the board. Now again, the aggression from him is something that you love to see. But you cannot have a game like that when you are, in position to win. This was still a winnable ball game. You can't have a performance shooting from the field like that. Because all that will do is really hurt the chances a team has to succeed in that situation. So there was just no way that you could have something like that happen. And they're just going to have to get right. Of course, again, it's tonight, so we'll see what ends up happening there. Quick note about that as well. They listed A.J. Mitchell as out for Game 4 with a right calf strain per Shams Charania. So the Thunder are already, still facing a little bit of a problem here. They had to get Jalen Williams just sat on the bench, and he is still day-to-day at this point with his own re-aggravated hamstring injury. Then you have Mitchell, who was starting in place of him, now out with the same thing. And so it's like, who else do you call up? Maybe you choose to start Caruso, but then that might hurt your bench minutes a little bit. That is something that the Thunder are going to have to think heavily about moving into this game tonight. And they've still got some hours to, construct a lineup that can really rival what the Spurs are trying to do. With that happening, though, and yes, AJ Mitchell up to this point has not really had the best series, but no matter what happens, this is the opportunity for the Spurs to put together a massive response. You've had 2 games in a row now where Wembanyama has not really had the same kind of effect he did in game 1, at the very least in a limited sense. And you've had other players around him struggle to really find their footing on the floor. Now's the time to seize back some control in this series. So, it's going to be an exciting one. And for their sake, they would hope that they can get it done tonight and even up the series before heading back to Oklahoma City in Game 5. And, if they can do that, man, that would be much better than what these next teams could say for themselves moving into the game between the Cavs and the Knicks last night. Coming into it, the Knicks actually had the best point differential through the first 12 games of a playoff run at plus 221 all time in NBA playoff history for a team. And they also, in terms of general point differential, by the, a certain point in the game, in fact, it was mentioned later that they would be in even more historical territory over what they have proceeded to do in their overall winning streak. Which is just insane to think that they are rivaling the teams that they are in that specific metric. But I'm getting too ahead of myself with that. And it can be easy for a team to do that anytime that they are up 2-0. You've, at this point, established home court for yourself in the Knicks case. And so you're on pretty much cruise control for the rest of the series. The way the Knicks have been playing, they don't want to let up for a second, though. That's the thing. That's a tricky thing. They could really sit back and just chill, knowing that they might have it in the bag already. But no, they want to pummel these teams into submission, no matter who the hell they're dealing with. And it's something that has really become a calling card for this Knicks team in this playoff run. So there was no secret that they wanted to come out and do it again. On the Cavs end, look, they may have been exhausted in Game 1, and that may have carried over into Game 2. You've gotten yourself an opportunity to rest up to this point, and you're at home, in front of a fan base yearning to see you log your first win in the conference finals since LeBron was a part of your roster. It has been far too long for them, as loyal as they can be, to have gone without a win in this round of the playoffs. And it had been even more of a struggle for them to get here in the first place. It's crushing to see that you did not get at least one game on the road and, frankly, got as close as you possibly could before giving it all away on a 44-11 run, then having another late, surge by this Knicks team in the third quarter, winning Game 2. But all could be right if they could get it done at home, something that they traditionally done throughout their campaign. They've been a much better home team than they are on the road. And so maybe something like that for them could carry over into success as far as this game is concerned. But the thing for them, they were going to have to again harness some level, and I mean some level of fight, some level of firepower, and some level of energy right out of the gate. They could not afford to fall behind early. And even Kenny Atkinson said in a mic'd up situation, a mic'd up clip and soundbite rather, to start off the game that, hey, we, as the Cavs team, we needed to force this Knicks team to face adversity, not them consistently putting us into that context of the game. We needed to set the tone. We needed to be the aggressors in this game. And so let's go out and do it. So just think about Atkinson saying that from that standpoint. Right? He ain't wrong. It has literally been in the hands of the Knicks at every vital moment of a game. And with that, you always are seeing the Cavs fall behind and have to claw their way back into it before ultimately not being able to. The best way that the Cavs could go about this is literally outpacing New York. And that kind of effort would begin and would have to begin early. What do you think proceeded to happen in the first few minutes of the game? Well, not so fast. Because to open the game, they literally allowed a 9-1 run that automatically forced the Cavs into a timeout just around 2 minutes into it. Yeah, they'd already gotten out and started racing past this Cavs defense. They'd already gotten Karl-Anthony Towns activated as both a scorer and a facilitator. Worst possible scenario for them to be in that early. And the free throw problem continued. Because whatever the hell was happening in Game 2, they still could not make their free throws that consistently in this game. And just like that, before people could even sit all the way down and get settled into the fucking game, they were already down by 8 points. In what was largely seen as a must-win scenario. Because, of course, no one, and I mean no one, I don't care what team you are, no one has come back from down 0-3. So from that perspective alone, at the very least, get yourself a game. Avoid that deficit. And maybe you'll have another chance to really win this series. If you can at least overcome that. The big men for the Cavs, after this time though, they started to turn it around a little bit. And it really helped that they specifically, with these feeds down low, from the likes of James Harden and also Evan Mobley himself, trying to, mask as a little bit of a playmaker himself, they started to shorten this lead up a little bit, and by that point, they responded with an 8-1 run and some physicality from Evan Mobley, which is exactly what you'd want in this situation, regardless of his thin frame. Because he, again, truly has that advantage on this Knicks team, no matter who he'd be facing up against, aside from maybe Mitchell Robinson. That much is true. And they were going to have to try to create more opportunities for him to impose his will in this game. Like, too much focus in a way has been on, Harden and Mitchell trying to carry the load offensively. And, of course, with what happened in Game 2, these shooters overall struggled to do exactly that. So again, having other help elsewhere could mitigate the problem just a little, at least a little bit. Now with that being said, it wasn't necessarily perfect, as the Knicks themselves, they had Karl-Anthony Towns going on a roll himself. Like, he was literally just being a bully in the post, getting quality finishes at the rim, and getting to the free throw line, while making pretty much every single shot that he took from the floor, including one where he does, have a solid guard from Harden to deal with. He can't get the ball out, and he still just beats him with a fucking turnaround jumper, beating the buzzer before it can even fully sound off. That was the kind of shit that Karl-Anthony Towns was coming out with in this game to start. The Cavs, on the other end, they were actually being aggressive at times, going right at Jalen Brunson. And having that, along with the contributions of these big men, being so prevalent early, it did pay off for them, as they were able to keep it somewhat close for a good portion of this first quarter. But of course, not many good things can happen in a row for this team. It was already bad enough that Karl-Anthony Towns had 11 points in the first quarter. It got even worse as they just continued to allow open three-point shot after open three-point shot to McBride and also Landry Shamet coming in for the final few minutes of this quarter just to do those things exactly. And the McBride one was similar to one that Strus had hit before him. Because I just find it impressive that you will have these players get such low passes, like McBride and Strus on these possessions. They have to go so low to get the ball because it's placed damn near towards the ground at their feet, and they have to just bend down, get the ball, and then still rise up as high as possible and fire them up. And they green them both. I just found those sequences very impressive. So, you see that here, and those are quality shots. Those were one of few that would go in for the Cavs. Foreshadowing. One of very few that would go for them from range. But hey, it worked out for them there. And Dennis Schroeder was able to bail them out with a different one before Josh Hart responded with another open look in the second consecutive game after he did what he did to them in game 2. Because they simply did not learn their lesson for whatever reason. It's like it gets to a point where, again, you go beyond exhaustion, you go beyond a lack of energy, you're in game 3. You know this team by this point. You've played them several times this season, and you're still allowing some of the same routine mistakes and miscues. They were going to have to clean that up. They were down by 10 after allowing 37 points in the first quarter. So the Knicks still, even with all that happening, even with them offensing a little bit, they had the advantage. And that was just not going to be a recipe for success if they were going to be the ones outscored by this Knicks team. They needed to create chances for themselves to take this game over. And it had to start very, very soon. It had to. Like, as I noted, they've allowed New York by this point to do way more than they were overall. So they needed to get it together. And, of course, they couldn't help themselves turning the ball over before they could even settle into that rhythm. Now, to their credit, they did start it off a little aggressive in the second quarter. And, quite frankly, they needed to. So that was a good turnaround. A very good turnaround. But, again, even with them trying to push the pace up a little bit, even with them trying to drive into the lane, they still put themselves in vulnerable positions to give the ball away. And that is exactly what happened, fueling more easy looks for this Knicks team down on the other side of the floor. It was just ridiculous after a while. After all of that was done, though, they got a brief 8-2 run, with Jordan Tyson ultimately being the catalyst with his energy alone, and a nice, tough, muscled-in score over Mitchell Robinson, having to contort his body and all, twist the ball up into the glass, and convert it to go. Like, you're not expecting that from Jalen Tyson, but hey, those are the kinds of things that can happen when he does get playing time, and he is able to execute well in the game. Those are the kinds of results that you can get right there. And so that brief run right there was a little bit well-timed for this Cavs team. Everything was going right for them. They were keeping the energy up. They were starting to turn the pace around, and they also got James Harden going with multiple open looks inside the lane, putting up that patented floater and just working his way out of these pick and roll sets over and over again. Just running that bread and butter, and he was even able to get at least one such matchup on Jalen Brunson and get the better of him. I'm out here, I'm saying, hey, you have to do that way more considering what the hell he did to you in game 1, but you'll take it any way you can get it. So that turnaround for him in the scoring department was great. And it started making this game a little closer. Before you knew it, the Cavs were cutting the lead down to within 1 and 2 points. And they were even able to take multiple chances at tying the ball game up, even as this was getting into potentially the clutch time mark of the second quarter. With him utilizing that ability to break down defenders and take advantage of angles inside the paint, he worked his way up, James Harden, to 10 points in the second quarter. So finally, even if just for one quarter at this point of time in this series, you had Harden show a little bit of life, at least on one side of the ball. Now, could they, as a team, string it together on both sides? Hell no. Hell no. Because they still allow the Knicks, despite all of it, they still allowed them to close out the second quarter relatively well. After James Harden made one free throw, they allowed the Knicks essentially over the rest of the quarter to go on an 8-3 run. So even when they were doing well, as I probably said before, even when it appeared as though they were doing everything right, they were tightening up their rotations. They were making things difficult on Jalen Brunson to get into the lane and make him uncomfortable. They were still living with Josh Hart shooting from deep, and still they paid the ultimate price for it. If not for a Donovan Mitchell late buzzer, not for another Donovan Mitchell masterpiece to rein in another late shot and a half, they would have not scored a single point in this time frame once again. But nevertheless, they were trailing 60-54 at halftime after a much contested end of half play. Apparently, James Harden got fouled on it and he was looking for the call. Instead, they sent what could have been a landing space violation. They just disregarded it and it went to halftime. Even if that foul call would have taken place and they would have gotten points on the board, you're still at the mercy of the Knicks here. Nevertheless, for them to be within 6 points in this game wasn't the worst thing in the world, as long as they could capitalize on the forward momentum and keep New York off the edge, off of it entirely, to open the second half, in the same sense that they needed to do in Game 2 before giving up the 18-0 run they gave up then. Now, with me eating at the time, I didn't necessarily take full notes for this third quarter for this game, but I was still watching it. And dude, the Knicks wasted no time getting Jalen Brunson activated. Even as the Cavs tried to make this closer, they allowed Jalen Brunson to get in isolation on several different occasions, still take advantage of James Harden multiple times, and also Donovan Mitchell was factored into this as well, with his weak defense being sought out for a couple of, assignments as well, and he was able to score at will with them, driving past them with one-handed layups on his right hand off the glass, with him drifting over on multiple occasions towards the right baseline of the floor and hitting mid-range shots. And ultimately, just continuing to showcase why he is one of the better scorers in the game. And the Cavs, still, at no point did they worry about double-teaming him. No, they allowed him to get his own way. Some of it, they threw late double teams over there, with Evan Mobley trying to help. And at those points, with him still making shots over him, it's like, there's not much you can do there if that's what's happening. But it was always something for this Cavs team getting in the way. And then you factor in how, even with the Knicks not necessarily going on that large of a run to open the third quarter, these turnovers were just getting ridiculous. These turnovers were just getting ridiculous, man. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't know what the hell made James Harden think on one such occasion that he was just going to fucking get the ball to Evan Mobley with an inaccurate pass with 3 Knicks down the court, also trying to get their mitts on the ball. And that promptly led to a turnover. Then you had another turnover in literally just 34 seconds after they'd already scored. They literally could not control themselves to just, for 1 quarter, let alone a minute, a single minute, keep the ball in their hands and not give them the room that they need to make a run. Luckily for them, Donovan Mitchell came with enough energy. He had some early scoring for them, including a fading deep three-pointer in the corner over multiple defenders, somehow, some way, to go in. And they went for 5 straight points there, then promptly allowed the Knicks to just go to work. I mean, they started spacing this game out once again. The occasional 3-point shot from a Cavs team that had been struggling to shoot from 3-point range the entire game could only do so much. By that point, they'd allowed the Knicks to fully settle into this one. Again, of course, Jalen Brunson was still keeping it going, and I think he himself accounted for 12 points or so in this third quarter specifically, as everyone else also continued to hit their shots to a high level. Meanwhile, the Cavs, it was just an abhorrent disaster for them, because you just factor all of it in, as I've been repeating up to the end of the game, and also the start of the fourth quarter. The amount of turnovers that they'd accrued, the free throws that they'd missed up to this point, which, with the game being closer, would have factored into them potentially tying it up if they would have made them all. And then also the lack of efficiency from the field compared to this Knicks team. The 3 things that could ultimately derail their chances, all of their chances, at winning this game came into full effect at multiple points, including this third quarter. And it isn't a surprise to see then, with all of that going down, despite Sam Merrill making his first 3-pointer in multiple games now, they still trailed by as large as 11 and then 13 before going into the start of the fourth quarter with a 9-point deficit. And this tells you a lot. Literally, to end off the third quarter, they do have a solid run, and they get Evan Mobley into the lane for a monster dunk as he hangs on the rim. You can celebrate like that all you want to. The only issue with that is, as he's still hanging on the rim, the Knicks push the ball up off the inbounds pass as Jalen Brunson gets all the way to the rim. And with virtually no one else there, with Mobley potentially being the matchup there, he's so far out of position now that he just lobs it up easily to Mitchell Robinson with seconds on the clock. And it goes down to then increase the lead to 9. Continuous mistakes over and over again piling up. There's no excuse for you to be out of position like that. And they just proceed to get an easy bucket of that sort with virtually no resistance whatsoever. And this fourth quarter made it even worse, because my goodness, man. As I noted at this point, it's for your season. It's for your season. And you need to be able, ultimately, if you're the Cavs, to run with this Knicks team, which had been the problem for them. Because despite everything else that had been going down, this metric was posed in the fourth quarter, that at around the 10-minute, 20-second mark, the Knicks had a 17-0 advantage in fast break points. 17-0. In a game that was essentially still around double digits to open the fourth quarter, that was the difference in transition. And it made things even worse when they allowed this same Knicks squad, already having that advantage, to go on a 5-0 run. with Josh Hart continuing to go on a shooting tear from downtown. Also, how many fucking times are they going to allow Mikal Bridges to get these easy push shots in? I saw something earlier saying that the man is now the only player in the postseason to ever go on a 60-40-100 shooting split run on a minimum of 50 field goals attempted. He is the only one. I understand it. So when you have him shooting that hot, you'd think that it would be wise to actually put a body on him. And yet, they still allowed him earlier in the game and in this fourth quarter too, on at least one possession, to just get the lightest touch floater into the basket, as everyone else is just standing around distracted at whatever else may be going on around the court. There's no excuse for that, especially in a game 3. Especially when, again, you seem to have everything that you would need to know about this team laid out there in front of you on film, in the numbers, everything, everywhere. And you're still giving up these fucking elementary school shits. It is crazy. It's crazy, man. Like, I cannot tell you how much like it makes no sense, dude. Consistency. Man, I like at this point between everything, I guess it just runs in the city of Cleveland for them at this point. The turnovers, the problems with, being effective on offense. It's no different than what the hell the Cleveland Browns have going on in their quarterback room. These niggas can't pass for shit. They cannot consistently hit their fucking free throws from the free throw line, because you literally have Donovan Mitchell miss another one when it counted. And when you're trying to shorten the lead up as much as possible to get easy points at the line, they still can't do it. And then people coming there, perceived to be saviors for these teams, turn around and do absolutely nothing. Not to compare Deshaun Watson to James Harden, but quite frankly, that is the territory that we're in right now in terms of on-court production. Because even with Harden having a solid game up to this point, and even with Donovan Mitchell having a solid game up to this point, it all culminated in them not really doing much in the fourth quarter as a combined unit. And, at least from the standpoint of scoring and being efficient from the field, they still met the same problems with turnovers. And a lot of these shots early for the Cavs as well is just ridiculous. Because a lot of them, whether it be Jared Allen trying to put up floaters at the rim, or whether it be Donovan Mitchell trying to get layups at the rim, these were give-me shots that were not going for this Cavs team. Maybe they didn't have the legs for it, but again, even if that is the case, dude, something is going to fall for you at some point. Your season is actively on the line, and you still cannot get some of the freest buckets imaginable. It made, zero sense as to why those shots are being missed in those quality moments. And then the bleeding just got worse because Landry Shamet decided to step in and walk down James Harden and pull off a fucking sidestep on him and get his fucking 6th point of the fourth quarter. Just toying around with this man. There's no excuse. And literally, the first bucket that Landry Shamet got was also on James Harden in the same way, the exact same way that he gave up Harden the game-tying shot in Game 1 to Shamet. The exact same thing happened. And it's Game 3, and we're allowing these same things to take place. There's no excuse for that whatsoever. And he went off as well to make matters even worse for fucking 9 straight points for this Knicks team. 9 straight to open his work in the fourth quarter. He was a fucking flamethrower from deep. They couldn't stop him. And you'd think that it would be wise to, again, get a body on him. Then the body you get on him is Harden, and they've already told you after game one, they've already told you they're going to go at him in those moments, and here you are allowing it to happen again. Even with Harden needing to do way better individually, like you'd think that you'd be way better about effectively rotating around him and getting him out of the way. Out of the way to do it. I mean, shit. Even with me, not necessarily bringing it up last game. Like, it got so bad to the point where you have other people getting themselves in foul trouble, whether it be Max Strus or whether it be Donovan Mitchell last game, literally trying to move this nigga out of the way so that he is not falling victim to what the Knicks are trying to do to him specifically. And when you have to think that consciously, when you have to trust that little in your own teammate to handle their own business on the court defensively, in some cases that can be a net negative issue. And it happened to be for the Cavs here. Because you're overcomplicating it. Like, you have to always be aware of where Harden is. And then you have to constantly do all that work to surround him with as much help as possible. It leaves someone else exposed. And the Knicks, more than often, they were able to find the outlet over and over again. Ultimately, this lead got to as large as 17 for the Knicks, with OG Anunoby literally throwing up a three-point shot to just completely rid himself of it, and he still makes it with virtually no effort to resist it whatsoever. And that wasn't even the worst of it on what was a 14-5 run, as Landry Shamet himself would eventually get up to 11 fourth quarter points. No, that wouldn't even be the worst of it. The Cavs were trying to, string together a few high percentage looks in the paint, but with them struggling from three, they hadn't done nearly enough to make those possessions late count, even if Mobley was being pretty accurate from that respect. It didn't matter. You'd already been trailing by too much. You'd already been too ineffective for most of this game. Then the real slap in the face came. And this is where I'm telling you right now to get straight into it from the Cavs' perspective. Because let's be honest about ourselves. They lost this game 121-108. They lost this. They are now down 0-3. No one comes back from 0-3. They are as done as it gets. You can stick a fucking fork in them. They're finished. And this sequence right here told me everything I need to know about it. Because the game might have been over. They may have been gassed of energy at that point. They may have felt defeated. And you know what? When you see this play, when you see Jalen Brunson take the pass from Mikal Bridges off the rebound, and he zigs and zags his way into the lane with a body in, I think at this time, with the players on the floor. Let me see. Yeah, with the players on the floor, you have, at the very least, a couple players watching him bring the ball up, and they just pull off these half-hearted attempts to try to keep him out of the paint. They go away from him, and it literally takes one head fake, going this way with nobody else on that side of the court. There's nobody there. There's nobody he'd possibly be head faking to, trying to give the ball to and away to in that moment. And yet the Cavs, they don't even recognize it. They are so fucking lost as a team that they just allow him to peruse his way into the lane anyways, off of a head fake to no one, and put up the easiest basket of his life. Jared Allen fell for it. Harden was nowhere to be found. Strus was nowhere to be found. The entire back line fucking collapsed. And you just have Jalen Brunson put up the finishing touch, the icing on the cake, if you will. That sequence right there, I'm like, oh my goodness. This team is fucking pathetic. Let's just call it what it is. They are fucking pathetic. Like, yes, we could argue that them losing that game one, in a way, did set the tone for how the series would go for them. Because with what we know now, that was their best chance to do it. That was their best chance to get a win. And they have shown you nothing to suggest that they can truly do much of anything in this series consistently enough to even get you a game. That had to be infuriating. That sequence right there, and multiple of the other ones that I outlined, in that fourth quarter alone, had to be infuriating to the fucking Cavs fans that paid money out of pocket. The hardcore Cavs fans that have sat for years trying to watch this team progress into something more than just a play-in contender. And then more than just a second round exit. That's been the story for this Cavs team for at least the last few seasons. And here you are with a chance to turn that around. And in front of your own home crowd, you have no pride. You have no fucking dog in yourself to tell you that, hey, for at least the full 48 minutes, I'm going to play my fucking heart out to at least try to get a win, to at least come away with something in this conference final series, rather than allowing the Knicks to just completely railroad us the whole fucking time. I found that to be complete and total bullshit. And when you have stuff like that going on, it is difficult to just say, James Harden is a cone on defense. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. That much is true. We know that. Know that. Yes, he had yet another game where he had more turnovers than assists. That is true. That is true. There's so much more that goes into it when your entire team is quite literally just giving up. Because that's what it looks like. You have multiple people saying it. Oh, they're giving up, they're quitting. How are people not expected to say that when they're seeing what they're seeing on the court out there? When they're seeing that play go down on your defensive front, with multiple defenders in the area, with the ability to do something, anything, to stop Jalen Brunson in that moment. And they just said, Like, what the fuck? So that right there tells me that this series is done. Even if, again, crazy things can happen all the time. They seemingly don't want that kind of pressure. They don't want to rise to the occasion as a team. And until they get themselves out of that mindset, it looks as though, once again, despite having the roster to potentially get to the NBA Finals, they're not going to get there. Not like this. Not like this. The game itself as well, in terms of everything that I outlined, you look at them from the three-point line. You're not winning a game shooting 29.3% from the field. And again, in terms of volume shooting teams, the Knicks obviously had a high level of volume in the regular season. That's been largely maintained in the postseason. The Cavs, coming off of what they did in the regular season last year, were probably in a similar ballpark here. And in a perfect scenario, that would be their best bet to make as many quality shots as they could and try to win the three-point battle. They barely did. And they weren't even efficient in doing so. So it's like at that point, it would have been better for you to stop shooting rather than settling for these jump shots and giving the Knicks even more ammo to start up free positioning on the other end of the floor, knowing that whether you make or miss the shot, you're not going to run back. And they know you're not going to run back. And you're going to get continuously exposed. In the same way, though they had less attempts, in a 13-point ball game, you only made 63.2% of your 19 free throw attempts. I'm not even saying you have to make all of them, but you could do a little better from the free throw line if you are going to settle for drawing fouls. You could afford to do a little better. Some things did go right. They limited the advantage in overall rebounds. They did have a slight advantage in points in the paint as well. But you also gave the ball away far too many times. Even if the margin of difference here was just 3 turnovers between the two teams, your turnovers, more often than not, literally cost you several different opportunities to go on large runs, large sustained runs in this game that could have taken things over completely. Like, even with all of that being said, even with them even tying up the game at multiple occasions, I had to restrict myself from saying something and saying that they did something that they did not do, because they never led. Yes, the Knicks, in what might have been a must-win situation for them, in the perfect setting, in their own home floor, they never led in this game. All these Cavs fans, again, going out of their way to see this game in real time, and potentially watching from afar as well, if there are Cavs fans in other states, trying to support you, trying to cheer you on, and you don't even give them an ounce of feeling what a lead is in this game. That is bullshit. And it is all part of their own self-inflicted wounds. All a result of that. For the numbers, Donovan Mitchell had 23 points on 9 of 21 shooting. I can guarantee you that there was a noticeable dip in production in the fourth quarter. Same for James Harden with his 19 on 8 of 15 shooting and 1 of 7 shooting from 3, along with 5 rebounds and assists. That also tailed off in the fourth quarter when it mattered the most for yet another game in this series. Even if you don't want to put all the onus on them as a duo, and even if you don't want to put all the onus on Mitchell, at some point, you have got to rise up if you are the star of this team. If you are the unquestioned star of this team, you have to play above expectation. And you have to be able to do those things that aren't necessarily expected of you, to go above and beyond and lead your team to victory. Because that is what Jalen Brunson is doing on the other end. And neither of these two, when it has mattered in clutch time scenarios or late game situations, have either of them been able to do that. You can chalk it up to many different things. And you can say that Harden is being a bit of a ball hog here. Mitchell actually got himself a fair amount of touches in this fourth quarter and had enough chances to make a far greater impact than he did, and he did not. So again, everybody has to be accountable about that. Like, that is the truth about this scenario. The big men did their part as well. That's the crazy thing. Big men did their part. They played solid defense overall. They were monsters on the glass in terms of scoring, as they combined for 41 points and 13 rebounds combined on a combined 17 of 27 shooting from the floor. That is pretty good for both of those big men in Mobley and Allen. So they came to play. They did their part, and yet it was still not enough. Largely due to the poor perimeter shooting that they had as a team. Again, 29.3% is so far below average. Entire players will literally lose their jobs for shooting that poorly from the three-point line. And here you have an entire team coming together to perform in that atrocious manner. No. Not acceptable at all. Like, they're finished. They're finished. That game one got them in some kind of funk, and for whatever reason, even with, again, having familiarity with this team over an entire regular season and now postseason, they still can't fucking figure it out. So again, why would I still say that they can and will to literally do something that has never been done in terms of coming back from an 0-3 deficit in the playoffs? Has never happened. It's not going to start this time. Even if the Cavs do win Game 4 on Monday, tomorrow, they will still get in New York and they will still crumble if it even has to come to that. We already understand that. Because they cannot win on the road that consistently. And again, doing it one time against the shaky 1 seed in the Pistons does not prove to me a damn thing. 2 times. Doesn't prove anything. No. Like, nobody's buying that. And the way that this Knicks team is playing, to get into them more, I mean, you are going to struggle mightily in doing that. This is their first postseason with a 3-0 lead in multiple best-of-7 series. And of course, they had the same outcome against the 76ers, and they proceeded to close them out in 4. So this would suggest that they can do the same to Cleveland in 4. This is also their 5th straight road win in the postseason by 10 or more points, which is tied for the most in playoff history in general in the NBA. And also, in a 10-game span, they have the largest point differential of any team in any 10-game span, regular season or playoffs, in NBA history, surpassing both the 1973 and the 1971 championship-winning Bucks franchises. They are not fucking around with you. It's just crazy, as I've still said. Like, they have gotten some aspect of the overall work they've done in their run. They've been doing that in enough bunches in this game. It has not been an overall blowout caliber performance by this Knicks team. They've been susceptible to some chaos. They've been susceptible to some miscues and some turnovers of their own. And yet still, they've had enough long, sustained, efficient, quality runs to still beat the living shit out of this Cavs team. Repeatedly in this series. They have their number right there. And that's not going to change. It's not going to. You had Jalen Brunson go for a 30 ball on 10 of 19 shooting. You had Mikal Bridges for yet another time score on greater than 70+% efficiency from the floor with 22 points on 11 of 15 shooting. All of his makes inside the 3-point line, along with 6 rebounds. Karl-Anthony Towns didn't even have to score that much outside of the first quarter, and he still finished the game with a solid 13, 8, and 7 with no turnovers. Then you had Josh Hart put up 12 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals, stuffing the stat sheet and still putting up 2 3-pointers. Landry Shamet coming off the bench, giving him 4 3-pointers and 14 points. And then not to mention OG Anunoby coming in and giving them 21 points and great two-way play along with 7 rebounds and 4 assists on 6 of 10 shooting with 3 3-pointers. Like, you can't knock that kind of efficiency. And when that kind of a team is in this much of a zone, it is hard to shake them out of it. And the only way to do it is something that both of the Spurs and the Thunder have on their best days, and even on their worst days. Something that the Cavs don't possess. Defense! Even with the Cavs providing as much effort as they possibly could in this series, they would still struggle because their defense is not great. And you actively see it on the floor night in and night out. Like, all a win would do is just delay the inevitable for this Knicks team. They have them exactly where they want them. And no matter what, either they're winning on Monday or they're winning in MSG in 5. There is no in between. You've already had this New York squad dig them into such a deep hole. They have no way out of it. They have just played much better basketball in situational regard. And that is the most important thing in a playoff setting. Because in a great series, in the greater series out there, you are going to have that back and forth between teams. And it is all about how you execute in those moments of the game. That is how you end up coming out with a win or ultimately falling with a loss. That is it. That is what determines it. And the Knicks have strategically gotten the advantage in each and every single one of those times. They have not missed a beat, even when it does feel like they may. They're always in position. They're always playing for each other on the defensive end. They are not allowing too many things to slip past them. And they are playing with that kind of effort. They don't lose it. Whether it's Mitchell Robinson coming off the bench to the point where they hilariously had to take him out after they automatically started to foul this man in clutch time to shorten possessions, because we can keep on going at Harden instead. We don't have to put Mitchell Robinson out on the floor if y'all just going to try to start fouling the man now instead of actually playing basketball. We'll much rather have you do that and work for your buckets. That's what the Knicks want to do. And they've done a great job of executing that. But Mitchell Robinson's getting them that energy on the glass off the bench. Landry Shamet's giving them that shooting off the bench. And then your 5 starters are quite literally, even when you see Jalen Brunson being more of a defensive liability, you're still seeing the effort from him to actually guard up. Like, even when James Harden was able to draw the foul on Mitchell Robinson, what's Brunson doing? Even if he gets scored on, he's there in front of Harden's body, not in jail, and defending him as best as he can, even with his limited size in comparison to James Harden. Then you juxtapose that with Harden getting bullied on the other end by a smaller player. And again, when your weakest defensive player is still trying to exercise as much effort as possible, that's what it comes down to. And that's the overall message. Because I may end up carving out some part of this video. That's the message that people need to understand. That is what the, life of a defensive liability can be. you either let it consume you or you still put forth as much of a spirit as possible to play through it and overcome it for the betterment of your team. And that is something that the likes of guys like Trae Young were not able to accomplish, which is why he was sent away. This is something that James Harden is now actively a part of and has been pretty much for the entirety of his career. Like, this is not going to change about James Harden. But that is the point that I'm making. They know that you are that much of a liability on the defensive end. They're not going to stop targeting him, even when you try to rotate as much as possible around him. And even when you bunch it up to the point where you're leaving another ball handler or shooter open entirely, simply trying to overcompensate for James Harden's lack of ability to guard in man-to-man situations. If he would play with far more effort than he typically does, rather than allowing people to blow by him and open up a proverbial gate to allow people to enter the lane, if he'd continue to play with proper defensive technique at the very least, if he'd make an effort to get physical on occasion with these ball handlers through a full assignment, not just for the first few seconds and then allowing defender to or offensive player to race by him. No, literally keeping your body on him, shuffling your feet, doing whatever you have to do with holding your arms out, keeping your hands in proper placement to prevent easy shots from getting up. Because again, one of those Mikal Bridges floaters as well, you just get an entry pass right over James Harden. He's staring at the ball, and he does not get a hand up. He just stares. He looks at Mikal Bridges put up the floater off the fucking glass. More effort is needed on his part individually too, regardless of what Kenny Atkinson might be talking about. Because you're actively seeing the Knicks with Jalen Brunson, who is a great example of a defensive liability, still able to put together a strong overall defense around him, and still having him willing to go out there and put his body on the line. It hasn't come through that much in this series, but even he has at times been able to draw multiple charges throughout the season, has been able to pull multiple ball handlers in the chair and force travels and turnovers by being in position. And that is all that you can ask for in that situation. If you're going to get beat, fine. It does happen to the best players out there. But my goodness, you have to at least display that you care. You have to at least display some kind of recurrent theme in yourself as a player, so that others around you can recognize that, hey, even if they are switching on him consistently, I can trust that he will do the right thing, and that he will at least give it his all on the possession-to-possession basis to not get taken advantage of that much. If he would actually exercise that a little bit, maybe people would be more willing to switch with him and defend, just out of respect for what he's showing you. Like, these other defenders are out here fighting their ass off, and you want them to play for each other. But if Harden himself is not truly bought in to playing defense, why should they? Because the message is clearly not getting in the mind at this point. It does take buy-in. And quite frankly, for all the hardcore Harden fans, admittedly, he has never bought into the idea of playing defense. And he never will. And this is why, more than likely, it is looking like he will remain without a championship ring. That's not all that matters when it comes to the ring count and stuff. But that could potentially be the next level for him. And he has never and will never be willing to cross that road. So, he's just going to meet the same results over and over again. That's why what is making, that is what makes this Knicks run so great for them overall. Whether it be the Nova Knicks connection, or whether it be the fact that you are constructing this roster in such a way to where you had this much flexibility to bring all these players in the first place. Everyone is out there playing selfless basketball. Even with me joking about the Brunson ball shit, everyone is out there playing selfless and for one another. Everyone is truly bought in to the idea of bringing this thing all the way home. And you even see it in how the fan base is motivated about this. Now, just a single game away from potentially clinching an NBA Finals appearance for the first time since the 1999 season. Just crazy. Crazy. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.